Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. My name is Reverend Sally Fritchie, and I serve as the Associate Minister of this congregation alongside our lead minister, Reverend Beth Monholland, who is here this morning and had the honor of ringing our bell for us at the beginning of the service. We are a church of many different theologies and identities, united by a shared commitment to building community, seeking inspiration, promoting justice, and finding peace. Please look around at the color-coded lanyards of your neighbors and be aware and respectful of others' needs and boundaries while we're together this morning. We're a congregation of all ages, which means we embrace whatever noises or everything else that kids and various ages of humans can bring into a Sunday morning. And as always, people of any age are welcome to get a coloring kit from the box in the entryway, just near where the lanyards are. Today's service is inspired by the physicist Richard Feynman, who in 1961 asked a group of undergraduate students If in some cataclysm all of scientific knowledge were to be destroyed, and only one sentence was passed on to the next generation, what statement would contain the most information in the fewest words? It's an immediately captivating question. It's one that invites everyone who hears it to sink immediately into thought, trying out and discarding one sentence or the other, attempting to summarize all human knowledge in one statement. And given that, as you use, we aspire to draw upon sacred, secular, and scientific understandings to help us make meaning and live into our values, let's spend some time this morning with Feynman's cataclysm question, as it's called. It's my hope that we will all come away not necessarily with a definitive answer to the question, but with a deeper understanding of ourselves, our world, and of whatever knowledge we consider most valuable, most necessary, most life-giving. So whether this is your first Sunday with us or your 10,000th, whether you are here in the sanctuary, listening from Fellowship Hall where we're live streaming the service, or watching from afar at home or elsewhere, know that this service is for you. May you find in it something that you need. And now I'll invite us all to take just a moment to turn in your seats and greet your neighbors nearby. You might introduce yourself, simply wave, shake hands if you're comfortable with that. We'll take 1 minute to greet each other, and I'll call us back together with a ring of the chime. Thank you, and know that there will be plenty of time to continue those conversations in Fellowship Hall after the service. We begin our gatherings together by lighting a flaming chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition. If you're watching from afar and have a chalice or a candle of your own to light, I invite you to do so now. This morning, our chalice lighting words are a poem written by Marie Howe and read by UUCUC member Laura Robinson. Laura is actually the person who first brought this topic, the cataclysm question, to me and suggested it might make for a good service. So if your interest is very piqued by this topic and you want someone to chat with after the service, I know for a fact that she is very interested to hear from you. So this poem we're going to hear, titled Singularity, is about the beginning of the universe. And may these words and the flame we kindle here today remind us of what we all share in common. Laura?
Do you sometimes want to wake up to the singularity we once were? So compact, nobody needed a bed or food or money. Nobody hiding in the school bathroom or home alone, pulling open the drawer where the pills are kept. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. Remember? There was no nature, no them, no tests to determine if the elephant grieves her calf or if the coral reef feels pain. Trashed oceans don't speak English or Farsi or French. Would that we could wake up to what we were when we were ocean, and before that to when sky was earth, and animal was energy, and rock was liquid, and stars were space, and space was not at all, nothing. Before we came to believe humans were so important, before this awful loneliness. Can molecules recall it? what once was, before anything happened? No I, no we, no one, no was, no verb, no noun. Only a tiny, tiny dot brimming with is, all, everything, home.
Thank you, Laura. And with that, I will invite all of us to please stand if standing is comfortable for you and join in singing our opening hymn, number 1064 in your teal hymnal, Blue Boat Home. In 1961, Richard Feynman was a new physics lecturer at Caltech. This was before his Nobel Prize, but he was already a well-known researcher and speaker, famous for his engaging communication style almost as much as for his scientific mind. He was given the task of revitalizing the notoriously boring Intro to Physics course. And he chose to open the very first lecture of that very first class with this question. If, in some cataclysm, all scientific knowledge were to be destroyed and only one sentence was passed on to the next generation, what statement would contain the most information in the fewest words? Using this question as his students' first introduction to the study of physics makes it clear that the discipline of science, in Feynman's view, does not consist of the lifeless memorization of facts, but instead of asking engaging, thought-provoking, human questions. How might you answer this question? If all of scientific knowledge were erased, what single sentence would you want to provide to those who had to start over with nothing? It doesn't require you to be an expert in any field, but it does require you to think deeply about what is fundamental to what we call science. Feynman did answer his own question, and I'll share his answer in just a moment, but first, let yourself think about what you might say. The one sentence that would contain the most information in the fewest words. Before I heard Feynman's answer, my first thought was to try to capture something of the scientific method itself. Something like, it's good to repeat actions in intentional and controlled ways, to observe and record what results from that, and to share your growing knowledge base among each other. Thinking that that sentence would give future people the tools they need to discover the rest for themselves. Feynman's answer was instead essentially the atomic theory. He said he would want to pass along, quote, that all things are made out of atoms, little particles that move around, are in perpetual motion, attract each other when they're some distance apart, but repel being squeezed into one another. He explained that this one statement contained the basic knowledge needed to reconstruct the fields of physics, chemistry, biology, and beyond. An admirable answer, and far be it from me to say that Feynman did a bad job answering his own question. But I do feel it's relevant to point out, as others in conversation with Feynman have already pointed out, that atomic theory was actually proposed as far back as ancient Greece. And it did not revolutionize science or human knowledge at the time in the way that he seems to think it would. The challenge of writing the perfect cataclysm sentence has captivated people ever since Feynman first posed it. But it's actually a slightly different question, a slight variation on the original that most thinkers choose to focus on. Not what if some cataclysm wiped out all scientific knowledge, but what if that cataclysm wiped out all knowledge, full stop. What if all the gathered wisdom of humanity had to be simplified down to one sentence delivered to a new generation starting over? So that is the cataclysm sentence that any one of us might write, not just the physicists or scientists among us. And think of all the different answers you might get based on whether you ask that question to an artist, a writer, a physicist, or anyone else with different experience in the world, different knowledge. Our time together today is about, as our opening hymn said, casting questions into the deep. And as Unitarian Universalists, we do not pretend that the person behind the pulpit is the only one with answers, the only one with insight or wisdom to share. Each of us might answer this cataclysm question. Each of us might answer differently. Some might answer very similarly. We'll hear later in the service a handful of answers from different thinkers and writers, but first, I want to actually ask you personally, if hypothetically all human knowledge was lost, what would be the most important information in the least amount of words that you would convey to the next set of people? What would be your sentence? You should have an index card and pencils you can reach in the pews. This is a writing prompt. And if you're watching from home, you can draft an email if you want, and you have the option to send it later in the service when we collect cards in the sanctuary. Now, you can take as long as you want. Take the whole service to write on this note card. Be as messy as you like. But actually, try to write out a sentence today, or a few different attempts, that answer this version of Feynman's question. And toward the end of our time together today, we can gather up the cards of anyone willing to have their sentence shared aloud, and we'll get to actually hear some of the collective wisdom in this room, some of what this group of people would like to pass on. And if you don't want to share, do this just for yourself. Take the card home with you. But think about what sentence would the world need most if we were starting over from scratch. As we begin to sit with our question, as the beginnings of answers start taking shape on your note cards, I'll invite us to hear a piece of music which features the voice of Feynman himself. This is from the early 2010s. There was a musician on YouTube who stitched together quotes from popular science communicators at the time and made music videos celebrating concepts like space travel, quantum theory, and evolution. They called these songs a symphony of science. We have one here today featuring Feynman and centered around the very scientific fact that he felt was the most fundamental, the existence and relationship between tiny particles. Oh. Our screens are off, so I'm taking a pause to...
So, what are we really made of? Dig deep inside the atom and you'll find tiny particles held together by invisible forces. Everything is made up of tiny packets of energy born in cosmic furnaces.
The atoms that we're made of have negatively charged electrons whirling around a big, bulky nucleus.
The quantum theory offers a very different explanation of our world.
The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. That's a wonderful and significant story.
Suppose that little things behaved very differently than anything big. Nothing's really as it seems. It's so wonderfully different than anything big. The world is a dynamic mess of jiggling things. It's hard to believe.
The quantum theory
It's so strange and bizarre. Even Einstein couldn't get his head around it.
In the quantum world, the world of particles, nothing is certain. It's a world of probability.
The quantum theory offers a very different explanation of our world.
The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. That's a wonderful and significant story.
It's very hard to imagine all the crazy things that things really are like.
Electrons act like waves. No, they don't exactly. They act like particles. No, they don't exactly.
We need a theory of everything. Which is still just beyond our grasp. We need a theory of everything. Perhaps the ultimate triumph of science.
The quantum theory offers a very different explanation of our world.
The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. The universe is made of 12 particles of matter, 4 forces of nature. That's a wonderful and significant story. Wonderful and significant story.
I gotta stop somewhere. I'll leave you something to imagine.
For those who may not have recognized him in that video, Feynman was the one in the armchair who was laughing that the universe is a beautiful mess of jiggling things. And he was the one wanting to leave us all something to imagine at the end. Each Sunday here at UUCUC, we make intentional space to share the joys and sorrows that are closest to our own hearts. We usually take a long pause with music, give folks time to write down any personal joys or sorrows they're carrying and wish to share, either on a card or in an email message to joysandsorrows@uucuc.org. And then I'll read out those shared messages later in the service so that we can celebrate each other's joyful news and support each other's grief. During the pause, where you have a chance to write your joys and sorrows, music will be playing. Those who wish to can also come forward and take a moment at our altar table or at the table nearer the center of the sanctuary to place glass beads or flower petals into a shared vessel of water. The glass sinks to the bottom, grounding us. The petals float, balancing delicately between water and air. Together we'll hear our blessing song, Long Time Son, and while we listen and sing, you're invited to write any joys and sorrows you'd like to share, and if you wish, to come forward to place your glass bead or your flower. Leave your card on the altar if you have one. Thank you. Know that any written joys and sorrows will be shared aloud later in the service, and those who are carrying a private joy or an unspoken sorrow, may you find space here to lay down everything you have in your heart and find dozens of hands ready to lift it up and support you. So we have asked the question today that if all human knowledge were destroyed and you could pass along one sentence, what would it be? It's only fair to hear a few possible answers while you continue to work on your own. There's an excellent episode of the Radiolab podcast in which the hosts ask this cataclysm question to a wide variety of artists and thinkers. I recommend you go listen to the whole thing if you can, but I'll share a couple of the answers that they collected. Writer Nicholson Baker's sentence would be, "You know more than you can say," capturing the limitations of language and the infinite space of the mind. The artist, Lady Pink, would paint a mural rather than write a sentence. 4 stories tall, she said, depicting God as a woman or as a gray alien, descending from the heavens and looking lovingly down at the viewer. Composer Missy Mazzoli would leave one primordial chord, as she calls it, that has to be played by at least 6 hands on a piano. Developmental psychologist Alison Gopnik would have her sentence be a question and just one word long. Why? Journalist Cord Jefferson says that his first attempt at a sentence was this: "Race isn't real unless you make it real, at which point it will become the biggest problem in the whole world." And then he kept thinking, zoomed out even more, and chose instead as his sentence, "The only things you're innately afraid of are falling and loud noises. The rest of your fears are learned." Author Jenny Hallwell chose the simple, "everything is connected," because she wanted to capture some element of scientific truth as well as something more inspiring. I confess this one is one of my favorites. Everything is connected. Mortician Caitlin Doty went with, "You will die, and that is the most important thing." What I love about all these answers, all these cataclysm sentences or images or musical chords, is how brilliantly they reflect the specific lives and perspectives of those who offered them. There is no right answer. There are a billion right answers, 8 billion, because each of us has a piece, a genuinely precious, valuable piece of truth that could be the foundation of a new society. So what about mine? What about yours? Inspired by some of the more creative answers, I think my cataclysm sentence wouldn't be a sentence at all, but would be a human handprint, or a few handprints left by a group of people together. Handprints, not a drawing or image of a hand, but evidence of having touched that specific place. I would want to communicate, we were here in this place which was important to us. We were together. We are like you. We touch the world the way you do. Whatever we did, for good or bad, you could also do. And you can put your hand right here and know for a fact that I once did the exact same thing. There are right now ancient handprints found in caves across the globe, in Europe, Australia, South America. And I can't presume to know or project onto those ancient peoples when they left their mark, why they did so in that specific tactile way. But in some of those caves, tiny child-sized handprints appear high up on the walls and ceilings, meaning that someone lifted up a child on their shoulders so they could participate with the rest of the community. That's the kind of message that doesn't need words and yet communicates volumes. And that is exactly the kind of message I would like to include in my cataclysm sentence. But I actually haven't shared my favorite response from one of the thinkers interviewed by Radiolab. Jaron Lanier, who was someone who's been instrumental in creating the internet, you may have heard of it, and is now instrumental in creating AI, responded to the cataclysm question by refusing it altogether. He feels it would be hubris to assume that we have something useful to teach the imagined post-disaster peoples, especially because it's likely we caused the cataclysm that destroyed us. He says all our accumulated knowledge of physics or biology or even the creative arts, it's either something we found in nature or it's something we made. And these new people could find it too, just as we did, at their own pace, or they could make it in ways that will be better suited to who and what they are. He wouldn't want to deny them the journey of creating their own knowledge base rather than having it seeded by a dead parent civilization. And of course, as a product of UU youth groups, I should have remembered that when we're all going around a circle answering a question, you can always say pass. But this response, this refusal to answer, struck me as so unexpectedly humble and humbling. Why should these future people listen to us? The cataclysm question is posed in a broad, universal way, but depending on the specific time and place, the specific needs of this imagined future society, some sentences might be way more useful than others. How are we supposed to predict what will be most necessary to a people we'll never meet? If, for example, you leave your one sentence behind in a community living on a coastline that experiences frequent earthquakes, you should probably say, when the ocean water goes all the way out very quickly, it means a huge wave is coming and you should get to high ground, rather than wasting your sentence on some more metaphysical wisdom. And once I was thinking about the types of practical knowledge rooted in specific place, I realized I'd been ignoring one obvious fact, one that I should have realized as soon as I thought of those Neolithic handprints. That fact is, for many peoples of the earth, the cataclysm has already happened. There are countless worlds that have already ended. Countless knowledge bases, languages, rich histories, indigenous sciences lost or destroyed over the course of our planet's history. My cataclysm sentence of stamping my hand on a wall alongside those of my community would put me in a long lineage of humans who thought to leave their mark on the world in the shape of a hand. The oldest cave painting ever found is a red stencil of a hand in a cave in Spain, dating back more than 64,000 years. It was made by a Neanderthal, a species of person that has since gone extinct. So then I had to ask myself, am I listening to the cataclysm sentences that have already been written and left for me? The wisdom that they left for some imagined future we are now living in. What would it look like to extend the same trust and curiosity backward that we hope a future people would extend to us? I realized we would need a heaping dose of humility, letting go of the assumption that our information, our knowledge is by definition superior to all that came before. If we're going to imagine what sentences we would like to speak into an apocalyptic future, let's also consider the sentences we should be listening to from the apocalyptic past. We are already living in a world in which humans have had to answer some version of, what will we leave behind? Or, in the absence of all shared culture, what information can we even communicate? In 15th century Central Europe, some communities placed hunger stones in their local waterways, marking the low water line in times of drought and carving messages warning future generations. If you can see this, you are about to experience a famine. And what is that if not a cataclysm sentence? A single sentence carved where future people would see it, regardless if any other knowledge or any connecting threads were able to survive between generations. Its content was decided not based on what they felt was the most profound truth, but what might actually help those future people survive. Or when the Voyager probe was launched in 1977, a space probe heading out beyond our solar system, who knows where, ultimately, and it carried with it a golden record encoded with 115 images and a variety of natural sounds like the ocean and wind and thunder, birds and whales and other animals, plus musical collections from different cultures and spoken greetings in 55 languages. On its cover, the NASA team engraved pictographic images of instructions on how to play and decode the record, an image of a hydrogen atom, and a map of our solar system's location relative to 12 nearby stars. This message, quite a bit longer than a single sentence to be fair, was crafted with absolutely no guarantee that humanity or Earth or even our solar system would still exist by the time any being ever saw it. It represents what those who launched it thought was the most core, important information about all of us. One more example, one of my favorite internet rabbit holes to go down, is the project of creating long-term labels for nuclear waste. Nuclear waste, buried deep beneath protective layers of concrete and metal and earth, will still be dangerously radioactive millennia from now. And if some future civilization, long after our culture and language are lost to time, gets curious and decides to do some digging, how do we warn them away? What do we owe them in warning? Because just like carvings outside the tombs of ancient kings warning of curses, there might be nothing so enticing as a warning sign. This is an example of one proposed sign with faces of fear and disgust meant to transcend language barriers. Some other proposed messages read, "This is not a place of honor. What is here was dangerous and repulsive to us." This message is a warning about danger. The danger is to the body and causes death. There are plans to include detailed scientific information about the contents of the waste in case people in the future will somehow be able to neutralize it. And in case those future people have no communication in common at all with us, some want to make the landscape as inhospitable as possible, like embedding giant metal spikes in the ground. Or, this is my favorite, building structures that produce a mournful, ominous howling sound when the wind blows through them. I love this project because it grapples with something that I think a lot of us trying to answer hypotheticals, like Feynman's cataclysm question, forget to grapple with, that we should be asking not just what would we tell these imagined future people, but also how would we get them to believe us? How do we inspire them to care about whatever it is we want to tell them? We're trusting that they won't twist the information we give in some kind of destructive way, and we're hoping they will trust us enough to give our words weight. How might we piece together something that inspires as well as informs, something that would communicate elements of science, of our shared humanity, and of practical, useful advice? I gave you my sentence, or, not a sentence. And we've heard many different answers now, including refusing to answer at all. I am very, very curious what you all have been writing in yours, if you have been writing. So as we move into the Community Matters and offering, you'll have a chance to put your card in the offering plate as it goes by, and I'll collect them up here. This is only if you're comfortable having it read out loud with your name attached or not. Write your name if you want that. But finish up your final written thoughts if you're still working on it. All right, we, as UUs, acknowledge that our circle of care doesn't stop at our church doors. We are deeply connected to the community we find ourselves in and to the wider world. Remember to keep an eye on your eNews weekly newsletter for opportunities to show up and find support and get involved and be part of things here at church. A few upcoming things to be aware of. One, on Wednesday, July 10th, I'm going to be offering a repeat of a popular workshop I did a couple years ago, the Practical Prayer Workshop, which is just 1 hour long on Zoom in the evening. I'll help with some tips and tricks of what to say if you're ever asked to pray aloud, like saying grace or opening a meeting or similar. That will be at 8 p.m. on Wednesday the 10th on Zoom. Also coming up, our first Super Summer Sunday, which is a fun, family-friendly, all-ages events, will be on June 14th. We're having a big fort building party out on the lawn after church. July 14th. Did I say June? It's still June now. July 14th, thank you. We're having a big fort building party, so between now and then, bring all your biggest cardboard boxes here rather than recycle them. We'll be collecting them in Fellowship Hall all this week and next week. You can drop them off anytime. And now I hope you've been thinking about what you're drafting in your catechism sentence. If you'd like to add yours to those that will be read aloud, just put it right in the basket. And know that every Sunday, in recognition of our very real interdependence in the world, we pass the plate and share our offering with an organization doing the work of justice in the world. For our June Sundays, Pride Month, we're sharing our plate with Uniting Pride, the local organization that advocates for the equality, wellness, and visibility of LGBTQ+ communities here in Central Illinois. You can give by text or through the online portal on our website. If you're here in the sanctuary, the basket will be passed. Checks can be made out to UUCUC. And if you want your check to go to today's shared offering, just write shared offering in the memo line, and half of what you give will go to Uniting Pride. If instead you'd like your check to go right to your pledge for the year, just write pledge in the memo line. We invite you to give whatever is generous for you, and know that whatever amount, anything you contribute, is gratefully received and will be put to use right away, helping make a real impact here in our community. So the basket will now be passed, and our offertory music is another symphony of science. This one centered around one of my favorite catechism sentences, that we are all connected.
We're all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, to the rest of the universe atomically.
I think nature's imagination is so much greater than man's. He's never gonna let us relax.
We live in an in-between universe where things change alright, but according to patterns, rules, or as we call them, laws of nature.
I'm this guy standing on a planet. Really, I'm just a speck compared with a star. The planet is just another speck. To think about all of this, to think about the vast emptiness of space. There's billions and billions of stars, billions and billions of specks.
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. The cosmos is also within us. We're made of spark stuff, and we are a way of the cosmos to know itself.
Across the sea of space, the stars are others. We've traveled this way before, and there is much to be learned.
We're all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, to the rest of the universe atomically.
I find it elevating and exhilarating to discover that we live in a universe which permits the evolution of molecular machines as intricate and subtle as we.
I know that the molecules in my body are traceable to phenomena in the cosmos. That makes me want to grab people in the street and say, have you heard this?
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. The cosmos is also within us. We're made of spark stuff, and we are a way of the cosmos to know itself.
There's this tremendous mass of waves all over in space, which is the light bouncing around the room, going from one thing to the other, and it's all really there, really there. But you gotta stop and think about it, about the complexity to really get the pleasure. It's all really there, really there. The inconceivable nature of nature. To think about all of this, to think about the vast emptiness of space. There's billions and billions of stars, billions and billions of specks.
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. The cosmos is also within us. We're made of spark stuff, and we are a way of the cosmos to know itself.
Across the sea of space, the stars are others. We've traveled this way before, and there is much to be learned.
Thank you. We'll share our joys and sorrows that have been shared with us today. From Jocelyn Karsk, great joy seeing the purple cone flowers in the children's play area, bringing color and pollinators to our space. Thank you, building and grounds team and volunteer gardeners. From Lynn Wiley, joy in seeing Bonnie Rayett Friday in Peoria with friends. Her songs of love, compassion, and community are reminders of ways to navigate the fear in this election year. Joy from Margaret Lovell, joy that my wife Sheila retired from work on Friday. Sorrow from Gail Cohen, still devastated after the debate. Joy from Christine Cahill, a joy that I'm having rotator cuff surgery tomorrow, and so grateful for Medicare. Okay. An anonymous joy. Being part of this church brings me joy. The love and kindness here feeds my soul. When I soar, it will be because the members have been the wind on my wings. Aww. Oh my gosh, a joy from Autumn Haskins, who writes, my fiance Dalton, who is here with me today, yay, and I are happy to announce that we are expecting our first baby due in February. Yay. From Katie Goslin, joy. For those who have been with us throughout our journey with our almost 10-month-old Violet and her surgery, I'm excited to share she is done wearing her post-surgery helmet once the current one stops fitting, and we don't have to go back to Chicago until the 1-year anniversary of her surgery in November. We've been driving to Chicago every 2 to 3 weeks since she had the surgery at 2 months old. We're so thankful to be here and all of your support along the way. Thank you. From Haley Gibbs, feeling joy that the Article 2 revisions were passed at General Assembly last week to include protecting all beings from exploitation. Hey. From Barbara Jahola, in remembrance of my father, Leo Jahola, on the 38th anniversary of his death. Last Sunday was the 100th anniversary of his birth, and of my maternal grandmother, Lucy Will, who was born on this day 125 years ago. Joy from Wendy Graves. Congratulations to our daughter, Sarah, and her wife, Joelle, who were married last Sunday in Charleston, South Carolina. Yay! It rained throughout the day, but we were reminded that the tightest knot is tied with 2 wet ropes. A sorrow from Charles Walworth. This Thursday, I badly strained my back. I'm recovering well, but I'm limited in my activities and ability to work. Healing to you, Charles. And a joy from Marilyn Ryan. A joy. Happy birthday to Dee Dee Marble, who's watching from home. We celebrate you today and wish you a very happy year ahead. We'll do one more refresh in case more came in. Thank you all so much for sharing whatever joys and sorrows you were able to share. And again, know that if you have joys and sorrows too private to speak aloud, you are still held in the loving care of this community. All right, you have passed forward way more cards than I will be able to read out loud. So I think my plan will be to lay these out on one of the tables in Fellowship Hall afterwards so we can all enjoy the wisdom that all of us have shared. But I'll get to share a few of them before we go in there. So why do we ask the cataclysm question? Feynman asked the original version of his question mostly to prove that physics could be interesting, prove that it could be poetic and deep and engaging on a human level. But he also asked it because in 1961, everyone was thinking about the end of the world. The bomb, the escalating Cold War. And today, I think it resonates because it's pretty easy to feel like we're living through different cataclysmic times. For a lot of us, for me, there's a part of our imagination that's always a little occupied with preparing to lose a lot of the social structures that shape our world. A kind of background apocalypse anxiety. And spending time in community asking questions like, what would you save? What is something that would help people start over? Is actually a kind of hopeful and constructive way to engage with that imagination. So I'll share some of the sentences we created here today of what we would pass on if all else was lost. Love one another and accept your differences without being influenced by fear. You matter and you are connected to all things. Be kind. Change happens, life ends. Everything is connected. Share your life each day as if the setting of the sun was your last miracle to behold. Your life matters. Pay attention to what is around you and learn. Here's a good science one. Organic evolution is a computational process in which populations search for different forms and ways of living. Share your knowledge. It is all wisdom. Nerd gummy clusters will change your life forever. Oh, my favorite ones, there's a bunch that have one sentence that's crossed out. This one has a long one that's crossed out, and it says, see other side. On the other side, a circle. The universe is far larger and smaller than humanity can imagine, filled with unseeable particles that interact in unexpected but predictable, measurable ways to create all we see, hear, feel, taste, and smell. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Be curious, observant, listen and respond to others in the world around you, and share your questions and your answers with humility and love. People are very different from one another, but we love each other. We don't have to like each other. This one just says love. I could keep going. The only inevitable things are change and lack of change. Wash your hands and cover your mouth when you cough. Oh, this one's a question. What is love? We are all interconnected, every person, every animal, every blade of grass. You probably don't understand this as well as you could. It might be worthwhile to investigate further. Oh, another wash your hands. Continue to seek knowledge, but above all, treasure fellowship with your fellow human beings. Sit in silence to know the next right action. All answers lie within. A blank card, which I will take as a deliberate choice. Life cycles will continue. How we use that time is up to us. We are all made of stardust. Ooh. Everything is connected, and trying to make and maintain sharp, separating borders between things, places, or ideas is a waste of your time. There are so many more. So we began with the question that if hypothetically all human knowledge was lost, what would be the most important information in the least amount of words to convey to the next set of people? You have generated so many interesting, diverse answers to that question, and in those answers, I think something deeper is revealed. Because choosing to answer at all with all our various cataclysm sentences reveals that we feel we really do have something to offer the world. Reveals that we feel we might owe something to those who come after us. That we would want to ease their way, alleviate their suffering if possible. And reveals that each of us might have our own idea about what the likeliest causes of that suffering will be. Whether it's germs or misunderstanding, violence, destructive greed. We want to warn future people about nuclear waste or tsunamis or the parts of human nature we think will trip them up. We want them to trust us, to know us, or at least be curious enough about our existence to listen to what we have to say. And here's the good news. None of that actually requires any cataclysm at all. We don't have to wait for a cataclysm. Feynman gave us a helpful thought experiment, a step stool, to help us reach these truths that we most cherish and most want to share with future generations. But when we take the step stool away, the words are still there. The truths are still there. We don't have to wait for a cataclysm. It's in our power right now in this world to try to build on these foundations. Isn't that what we're trying to do? Trying to figure out the real, the core, and build on that. Hand that off to whoever comes next. We may not know what the future holds. We don't need to know. May we strive right now to live lives that embody these truths. May we continue to cast our questions into the deep, gather up all the answers that come back, and live according to these fundamental cataclysm sentences that we generated, that will continue to generate. May we listen to those who came before and live in such a way that will be helpful to those who come after. May we leave our gentle handprints on the world. May they survive whatever cataclysms come. Our closing hymn today, Wo Ya Ya, was written by a Ghanaian drummer, Sol Amarifo, and adapted for our hymnal by Yise Barnwell of the Sweet Honey in the Rock. Its title, Wo Ya Ya, can have many meanings, but in this case, the composer translates it as "We Are Going." Please stand, if standing is comfortable for you, and join in singing number 1020 in the Teal hymnal, Wo Ya Ya. And with that, we come to a close. Thank you so much for being part of today's service. We'll end with our chalice extinguishing words written by UU minister, Reverend Elizabeth Selly Jones, who writes, "We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again." Thank you. And when you go, go in peace, and these will be in Fellowship Hall for you.